What is up, everybody? Today I'm going to be talking about my lifelong journey of the 14 houses that I occupied since the age of 1. Regards to the cities that I lived in, I will discuss until the city that I moved to because that's personal and I don't want to get into that. But yes, 14 houses and might possibly be 15. Whether I buy a house where I'm at now or I have to live closer to the mother of my daughter to be present in my daughter's life for her schooling, which is very vital to me. I'm not one to chase people, but I have to do what's best for my daughter, not for myself, if it comes down to that. And that's a whole nother discussion. So I was born in Pennsauken, New Jersey. And I lived in that home, which was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house with a basement, and it was approximately 1,000 square feet. I lived there to the age of 9, in which my grandmother helped my father get a down payment to move to Boynton Beach, Florida. I lived at that house until I was about either 18 or 19, and I remember I started as a webcam model at the age of 18. I was still in college at the time, and I started making decent money. So I think by the time I dropped out of college when I was in my own house, so I'll talk about that. But I ended up renovating my parents' garage in order to make it more comfortable for me to work as a webcam model in their house. So things that I done, like I put down a floor, I spackled the walls to make them flat instead of like they were rigid, and then I put a wall up with a door, and it was just more insulated. So I didn't really hear my parents much, and my parents didn't hear me. And then I did like an AC, a portable air conditioner, and I exhausted the heat outside of the garage. I cut a little hole in the garage door to exhaust the heat. And that worked, to an extent. It was very loud, and sometimes it was even then still too hot. Obviously, the garage isn't insulated that much, so keeping heat out wasn't the easiest thing to do. So I lived there for about a year, and then I got a double-wide mobile home in West Palm Beach area, right by the Palm Beach airport. And that I bought for, I believe, $32,000, and I lived there for about 8 months and sold it for $40,000. And then I said, okay, I want a house. I started making money. I was with somebody at the time, so I found a house in a really good neighborhood in Boynton Beach. So I wanted to move back to a nice neighborhood, and the house itself was very expensive. I think it was like $475,000. And I did a lease to own option where I would lease it for a year and then buy it because I knew I couldn't qualify yet for the loan. And it was a pretty big house. I think it was like 6 bedrooms, 4 baths. Excuse me. And so after a little bit of time, when I was talking to my accountant at the time, he's like, look, realistically, this is how much you have to make in order to buy this house, which really scared me. And I ended up losing like $13,000 on this house, leaving earlier than the year. It was just a really bad situation. After that, I ended up moving back to my parents for a little bit. And then or did I go straight there? I can't remember. I think I went back to my parents for a little bit. And then I bought my first townhome in Lake Worth, Florida, which was only about 15 minutes from the place that I was leasing, and about 8 minutes from my parents. And so I lived in this townhome for a little bit. It was 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 2-floor townhome. It was just awful. I mean, I heard my neighbors having sex because our bedrooms were back to back, and you can hear the headboards. You could hear everything in the other person's house. I don't believe there was any type of solid concrete between the homes. It was definitely almost like you were living with that person. And I know that they had a dog as well, and their dog was always barking, and I could just always hear it. So I ended up buying a house about even a mile from there, it was a brand new house. However, it was designed for somebody else, and then they backed out, so it was an inventory home. This seemed that happen a lot with me when I buy new houses. There's not one house that I specifically built to design and lived in, which is unfortunate because I had quite a few new houses. So at this time, I was in a really bad situation because my townhouse wasn't selling, and I already owned my new house. So at this time, I had 2 mortgages at the same time, and my bills were just off the walls expensive. And eventually I had to fire my realtor, and I found another one, and she helped me sell my townhome. Excuse me. So in my community where I own this house, this is when my first marriage started to, not work out, and I just wanted a fresh start. So I was looking at, 1-story houses. I realized, because it was a 2-story house, it was, I think, 5 bedrooms, 4 baths, or 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. And at that time, it just felt too much, especially because I knew my relationship wasn't going to work out. So I ended up building a house in Tampa. And the reason why, so what happened was I made a bad financial decision, and this is when I got my second Corvette. And I got a Corvette, and I was paying like $800 something a month. And right when I went to qualify for my house, they're like, you can't get this house unless 1, somebody takes over your car, or 2, you come up with more money. And I was unable to do it. And I ended up losing $32,000 on that house and not getting my house, which was really, really awful. I had to regroup. I was single again. I moved back in with my parents, and at that point, I was literally at my lowest low. I was literally on the fence of giving up. Excuse me. And luckily, I found a rental in Lake Worth, and it was a nice 1-story. Sorry, at that time, it was a 2-story house. And I was there for almost a year, and then another rental popped up in the same community that was a 1-story that was closer to the front of the community, because that one was like a mile from the entrance. And not only that, it was on a lake, so there was no privacy. I got a fence there, but it was a see-through fence, and that was a problem because my neighbor had a little dog. So then I got the 1-story, and I ended up never fencing it off. I would just wrap the leashes around. I don't think I ever fenced it off. No, I didn't. It was just too expensive. So I lived at the 1-story until my year was up. And then, what did I do? Oh yeah, that's when I went to north, about an hour north of there. And I bought a really, really nice house. $425,000, was a 5-bedroom, 4-bath house, 3,300 square feet. 14.5-foot ceilings downstairs. It was so great, but it was a little bit older. It was a little bit dated. And so I lived there for a year, and then I started having troubles with my side neighbor. I had troubles with the community because the community says you're only allowed 2 dogs, and I had 4. Even though they were emotional support dogs and blah, 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 they weren't accepting of them. And like I said, I had troubles with the next door neighbor. So eventually, before I moved out, I met the mother of my daughter, and we were like, oh yeah, we just want a 1-story, this is too much. So then I moved a few miles south into a nicer neighborhood in a brand new home that we lived in for, again, about a year. And then I realized, like, look, this isn't enough space. 2 bathrooms isn't enough. So then we started looking at homes in Texas and what you can get in Texas for the right amount. So after being there for about a year, everything's a year apparently, we found a home in Texas, 3,500 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, a playroom, a movie room, an office, like everything you can ask for in a house. 20-foot double high ceilings in the living and dining areas. And in Texas, that's when everything started to change and get worse. And my parents moved there for my daughter, or my daughter, and then my parents left early because they just disliked Texas. And I tried so hard to like it, and I just didn't. So then my relationship failed fully in Texas, and the mother of my child wanted to go back. So I had to sell the house, and we were just waiting until the house sold. So realistically, we would have left in 8, 9, 10 months we were there, but until the house sold, I realistically couldn't leave. Once that house sold or had a sale, actually it was before it sold that I found the house just a couple miles from where we originally moved. However, I had a contract on a much bigger house that we were all supposed to move into, but when the relationship failed, I ended up backing out on that home, and we each lost $5,000 in that situation. So I'm not counting that house in the 14 houses. So that would be 15, technically speaking. And the Tampa house I never moved into, so that would be 14. So I moved back here into the home that I'm in now. And I've been living here since April 2023, so about a year and a half. This is almost like my longest home before my childhood home. And it's great here and I like it, but I also promised my parents that I would help them out, in which they would help me out as well financially, by hopefully incorporating them into a home or on the side of a home or near me. And I had plans. I was just looking at houses and planned on building one that would take a year to build because the inventory home sold. However, with the situation with the mother of my daughter, who's now 100 miles south of me, until my final hearing, in which I know what the judge is going to decide. If the judge says, hey, look, we're going to make her the primary parent, we're going to make her the schooling parent, she's going to go to school there, I have no choice but to move, or else I'm not going to see my daughter enough. I mean, it still might be 50-50 like I have now, meaning I'll see her on the weekends, and then I would see her all summer and probably holidays. But for me not to take her to school or pick her up from school every day just breaks my heart. So I would have to decide what I want to do, because realistically the houses there are in a bad neighborhood, really old, smaller, in a very heavy traffic area, and cost more than what I'm paying now, and I pay a fortune. So I don't know my options, but that's where I'm at. Either I stay where I'm at, I move somewhere with my parents local to here, or I move remotely close to, where she's at, maybe like the Sunrise area, because it's a little bit nicer than where she's at. But again, it's I'll be paying $4,000 a month for a place that's not mine, in an area that I don't want to be 20 minutes from my daughter, which is realistically 10 because she would meet halfway. But the only way I would ever do that is if the mother legally agreed to do 1-day rotations or possibly 2-day rotations. That is it. I would not do 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, or like currently right now I'm at a weekly rotation, which I'm fine with, because I don't want to drive an hour each way and have my daughter in a car for 2 hours plus every 2 days. Like, I can't do that with my lease. I don't have the time for that. It's not safe. So right now it's a 1-week rotation. Again, I would like to see my daughter every single day, but unfortunately that's not really that plausible. So that's my story. If you have any questions, please let me know. And you might say, well, why? There's people who live their whole life with only 3-4 houses. Why 14 or 15? And I keep trying to better my situation, but also life throws stuff at you, and either you can get hit or you can dodge it, and I choose to try and dodge it. And my dogs have obviously been a reason for moving a couple times or a few times. I mean, realistically, if I didn't have dogs, I probably would have had more apartments than houses, and more rentals than own homes, because there's no point of owning a home if you're only going to live there for a year. Realistically, I probably lost more in houses than I would have lost in rentals. But you live and you learn. My dogs are my dogs, my daughter's my daughter, and you have to build your wall up and fight life and see where it takes you. But yep, that's my video. Take care.